Okay, we have a call to order for the Bartlett Economic Development Commission meeting for April 12th, 2021, and it is live. Welcome back, everybody.
Thank you.
First call to order would be the first agenda item.
Meeting's been called to order. Yes, I'll go through roll call then. Jerry Cabasco.
Here.
Kirsten Erickson. Here. Robert Perry is not. Tracy Smadilla.
Here.
Nanette Gutenkopf. Here. Joe Laporte is not with us this evening. Adam Lewinsky. Here. Michelle Hughes.
Here.
On Zoom. Thank you. And Robert Gorski.
Here.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have a quorum tonight.
Okay, moving on to the next agenda item, we will have the approval of the February 8th, 2021 meeting minutes. Do we have any discussion, or does anybody move to approve?
I would move to approve the minutes as presented for the February 8th, 2021 meeting.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next agenda item would be public comments. Any of the chairs would like, the empty chairs would like to make a comment, please step forward.
Or anybody online?
There is nobody on Zoom?
Okay,
I
great.
guess not, so we'll move on to number 5. Annual Economic Indicators Report. Tony's going to give us an update on what's going on, so over to you, Tony.
Thank you. Yes, I am. And a few preliminary comments before you hear me talk for a while about the Bartlett economy. Find my 3 quick comments I wanted to make. I'm going to be probably, instead of facing you, I'll turn if there's questions during the presentation, but I'm going to, rather than read through 70 pages, a 10-page report plus all my materials. Is this better? For when you turn. Okay, thank you. That I'm going to be summarizing a lot of these because there's a lot of information. But I did want to definitely say that when I last gave this presentation was January of 2020. And as for those of you who were on the EDC at the time and were present for that, you recall a very glowing report. The numbers were all going in the right direction. And of course, none of us knew what the coming months, over a year, was going to bring. So I just wanted to say that in the 13 or 14 months since then, I'm going to be going through a lot of information where you're going to basically end up hearing that the economy is resilient and doing, relatively well, considering the circumstances. But I want to say that that resiliency isn't something that just kind of happened by happenstance. It's the result of many years of planning and economic development and staff and leadership by the village administration, the mayor, and the board. So I did want to say before I launch into this that really through the continued efforts of Mayor Wallace and the village board, the commissioners, including yourselves, a lot of the area entrepreneurs and investors and industrialists, a lot of the property owners, and of course business owners and staff. We've all had our part in, as they say, working together to try to keep this economy humming along as best as we could. So I was going to say that also this last year, to me, showed that economic development is indeed like a sport. One of the sayings that I say every so often, because we win or lose a lot of these projects as a team, and also it's very competitive. When I could go through lots of examples, we're kind of looking at a lot of things from more of a macro perspective tonight insofar as the village is concerned. but there are plenty of projects coming to our town that could have gone to other towns, just like there's some projects, you know, that go to other towns where we put our best foot forward too. So you've borne witness to several of those projects this year where people were looking around. Culver's is a great example of one. Last thing I wanted to say is we've also utilized, when I was thinking about my presentation tonight, we've utilized an interesting variety of incentives since the pandemic has taken hold and even before with the BETA program. We've done sales tax rebates, again, for the Culvers, for more brewing. We've used sales tax rebates for Ace Hardware and other businesses over the years. We've done fee waivers for a variety of projects to help bring it to town. We've done property tax incentives for the big industrial projects going into Cook County. And last but not least, what comes before the EDC, these BETA grants have been very successful. So with that, I don't want to go, I just wanted to make a few comments before we get into the report. So we're going to go through this, and feel free to interject and stop me while I'm talking. This annual report isn't something that we always did. For those of you who've been on the EDC for about 5 years now, we spent about 6 months going through a 5-year marketing plan in 2016. Quite frankly, a lot of the elements in that plan have come to fruition. Of course, not all of them, because we were talking about site by site, and some of the sites still haven't developed. But one of the things we wanted was a variety of performance indicators and measurements so we could gauge our progress. And again, for those of you who were around 5 years ago, we had a very, very high commercial vacancy rate at the time. It was 16% village-wide. It was close to 50% just downtown. And so we felt like we really had to do something. We were still working our way out of the Great Recession. So we came up with a number of indicators. And I think 2016 was probably the first year that I did this report. So now here we are in the 6th year of this. So we're measuring our progress on an annual basis. And it's good as an economic development commissioner. Really, it's something that we usually forward to the village board. It's something we'll put a lot of the information on our website. Typically, this is information that investors and business operators look at, but it's something that everybody on the EDC should be aware of some of the key economic characteristics of the village when you're thinking about what types of businesses are coming to the town, what kind we should get, what are some of our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's the kind of information that we look at. So in terms of, I have to mention the census because Joey's typically here is the one who updates us on the progress. We had expected to have some numbers by now, but like everything else, I think there's been some delays with that. So I wanted to mention that the numbers that we use, the only primary source of information that I can, off the top of my head, I can think that's in there is the business list. Everything else is from secondary sources or from demographics sources that we subscribe to, or that some of the counties that we're in subscribe to, like the jobs EQ report you see there. That's probably a $1,000 report, but we get it through our membership with Choose DuPage. So anyway, the population, I'm just going to generally say the population hasn't changed greatly since we've done this report, and certainly not since last year. We've had a few housing starts in terms of some small scattered subdivisions, but we're not really going to have a very firm grasp of the total population of the village. Joey could probably tell you right now that probably in a few months from now, I would imagine.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit after August is what they're saying.
Okay. And we'll, besides all the other typical uses we do with that information, we'll be sure to bring that information to the EDC so you can see that most likely we've grown by a few thousand probably since 2010, but we have some residential projects on the horizon that should increase that. So one of those is a couple of the smaller ones I'm talking about are a Pulte 27-lot subdivision near the high school, another small subdivision. I characterize them as small, even though, of course, the residents in the area tend to come in and review it, and they're big projects in general. They're multi-million-dollar projects, but they're not the 200, 300, 400 unit housing subdivisions that used to go up in Bartlett in the 80s and the 90s all the time. Those sites have mostly been taken, but not all of them. There is one more of those coming soon. But you can see they're, so when you add 70, 80 houses, you're adding 200 residents, and that's how it's been going for the past few years, just a couple people here and there. We are working, I know one of the key sites that we talked about in the marketing plan and that's been on the village's wish list to be developed since at least I started here in 2005 and probably prior to that, is the large property at the northwest corner of Route 59 and West Bartlett Road that over the years has transacted a few times, and it's owned by the Crown family. We call it the Crown Development Site. And yes, we are engaging with somebody now who could possibly build one of those larger scale subdivisions that we were talking about that could have a fairly significant impact on the population number, at least for that area. And also, for the past few years, we've talked about different apartment projects we've been working on, including one that we call on a village, both on village-owned property, one on a site that we call Site E, that's at Railroad and Berteau, that we've been working on getting an apartment building there, I think, for about the past 2 years or so, and another apartment project that we've engaged with a developer on over at village-owned property as well at the southwest corner of Route 59 and Lake Street. So again, I'm not saying these are all going to happen for sure. What I am going to say is that there is opportunity still for some population increase above that 42,000 that the village has been at probably for like about the last 10 years. In terms of household income, we use 2 different sources. ESRI is probably the leading demographics and mapping software company that I'm aware of. I think almost every community uses it. So I always say that it's not 100% accurate at all times because it uses algorithms to come up with their projections and estimates. However, if you go into Naperville, they're using ESRI estimates. If you go into Schaumburg, most of the towns are using that in between the times when they're doing census. So again, it takes different factors into consideration. And ESRI has the median household income. Last year it was like 100,000 even, and it estimates it at between 105 and 108. Daytime population is something that is very important in economic development. It's something that comes up frequently. And quite frankly, Bartlett's always been known as a bedroom community. Before the business park started, as you all know, it was just a scattering of small businesses around the town, your typical personal service businesses. There were, multiple grocery stores back in the day, and then Home Depot came in, but it's mostly been characterized as a bedroom community. I think when I first started looking at this number, the daytime population was about a third of what it is now, and that was really prior to the development of the business park. So the 2 services, ESRI estimates it at 9,260, down since last year, most likely due to something I'll get into later, which is the unemployment rate. But also Jobs EQ is that big report at the end of the packet from Choose DuPage that estimates it at over 10,000. So if somebody calls me tomorrow morning and asks what's your daytime population, I'm going to say about 10,000. I'm not necessarily going to say, well, it's 10,319 or whatever, but that's the latest estimate that we have. And that last paragraph, again, is just to bear in mind that it's really an estimate. And one thing the census does, the census counts people, but there's an economic census that I've had to fill out before, maybe some of you have filled out before, and that gets really granular. Like, how far do you drive to work? How much do you earn? It asks some very individualistic questions about your own economic status. And so that's more frequently than the, how do you say, decennial census. That's every, what is that, every 5 years or every 3 years? But, okay, next economic census will be next year. There's an application that does come through the census called On the Map. Again, this is just a little bit more about daytime population. It gives you a little bit of a clearer picture of who are these people. Are they people like me who live in another town and come into Bartlett every day, and I spend my money here for lunch? How many people live in Bartlett like you folks and might drive out of town during the day? And how many people both live and work in Bartlett? And so On the Map has, let's see, reporting 8,733 workers during daytime hours, 7,600 come from elsewhere, about 1,000 both live and work in the village like some of you folks do, and it still shows a net loss of about 14,000 people per day. That sounds bad, I know, but bear in mind that this is the 6th year in a row I've presented this, and this is the 6th year in a row that number has improved. So it's gone from, it goes down by a few hundred typically every year as we attract more of the bigger businesses into the business park. And so I also say, keep in mind, Census Bureau is always about 3 years behind with these numbers. So think of all the businesses that have come into the business park the last 3 years. None of those are counted in that. So we're always, again, a little bit behind on that. But it gives you kind of an idea of, are you a town like Rosemont where only a couple thousand people live, but 20,000 come in or something to work? Or are you a town that more of the population leaves during the day, which is the case with Bartlett?
Hey, Tony?
Yes.
How much do you think work from home is going to change this?
I think it's going to change it dramatically.
I would too.
Yeah, quite a bit. And unfortunately, the census is going to be, maybe I'll sit here in 2 or 3 years and tell you, well, here's the numbers now. After as soon as the economic census comes through, we'll look for that. But that's going to be over a year from now.
Right.
And a lot of people don't fill those out. So I write there that the inflow and outflow has continued to improve, and it should for the foreseeable future. That gives some of the numbers where I told you that back when I started doing this, looking at this number, it was 17,500 net loss. In 2013, it went to 17,000, 15,800. So you see that it still is trending in the right direction. The ethnicity hasn't changed a lot, but I would say over year to year it hasn't. But over the time since I've worked here and I've looked at demographics, of course, you've all seen increases the Asian population, and people of Indian descent in the census are counted as Asian. So that's been really, if you want to look at what's the largest demographic shift in the village over the past 10 years or so, that's been it. So it still skews primarily white at about 75%. The age is about the same as last year, 39. But again, that's what is it? Median age. It's gone up, pretty much steadily, indicating a lot of people kind of staying in place. And 25 residents 25 and older holding bachelor's degrees has also increased steadily. I remember telling people back when I started that it was around 30% in the low 30s, and it's over 44% now. So people are pursuing more education in general, and that number has trended upwards in Bartlett. Unemployment. So we talked about that a little bit. Why does ESRI estimate that the employment number has gone down in the village? It's quite honestly because, like I said, when I sat here in January of 2020, I was beaming and saying it's the lowest unemployment rate I'd ever seen in the village, 3%. You're not going to get any lower than that. I mean, I don't think any town's ever going to reach 100% employment. But then there we were less than 4 months later at the highest I'd ever seen. And that includes any time during the recession from 08 through 10. It never got up to 16%. So it spiked up to 16%. I remember reporting this to the EDC last October on one of our Zoom meetings. I was kind of doing a 6-month follow-up and just saying, here's what's going on with sales tax and unemployment rate. But again, you can see unemployment went from 2.8% last February, jumped up by over 13% within 2 months, obviously. Everybody knows why. And then in the 5 months since, when I reported it in October, you saw it was going down and down and down. And right now it's at 6.9%. So safety and prosperity. Safety's been in this report year after year, and it's something that I wrote that it's sometimes easy to take for granted. And I don't know if that applies to me, so I wrote that because whenever that's brought up as an issue, I always just tell people it's not an issue. It's not something to be concerned about in Bartlett. And it's always been, there's all kinds of different websites that are primarily real estate based, like, I don't know, Value Penguin and Neighborhood Scout, and they've all got these kind of cool names. And then usually every year they rank the safest towns of this size or that size, and Bartlett's been consistently very high in this ranking. As a matter of fact, it's 22nd safest city in America with 25,000 or more. And if you think about how many cities that is, that's out of thousands. Just by that measurement, it's in the packet. I can't remember who's ahead of it, but there was just one town in Illinois, I think maybe 2 places ahead. I don't remember who it was, but it's 22nd. And anyway, moving on, the prosperity index is something new that I learned about through one of the economic development blogs that I follow. And the minute I saw it, I went to look up various towns to see what's the prosperity index. It's through something called the Economic Innovation Group. Really, it started off as a distressed community index, and it ranks them from distressed to prosperous and everything in between. Prosperous is the highest ranking, and Bartlett was ranked as a prosperous community at 17.2. Business summary. So every year, one of the things they said to measure, just a down and dirty measurement, is how many businesses are there in town. And again, I've looked at these now for 15 years, and we had some years where there were 18 and 20 businesses closing with only 2 or 3 opening. There were a few years like that during the recession. The overall number of businesses has actually increased. Since I sat here and did this last January, you guys could all, as long-time residents and economic development commissioners, you know a lot of these places. I'm sure you frequent a lot of them. You've seen them. 120 Live. Some of them seem like they've been there for a while, but they've been roughly a year or less, and include Culver's, One Taco Dos Tequilas, 120 Live, the bakery that was just here for a BETA grant a couple months ago, Magnolia Events, Wow CBD, Hoot Dogs, which Scott was just talking about, Trackside Diner, and Midway Lanes opening any day, a bowling alley. We continue working with more brewing. You see that beautiful rendering. Somebody was going to ask anyway later what's going on with them, and we're still working with them and met with them as recently as this morning. So we're still pushing them. They're still interested in coming to town, and it's something that we hope to talk about in more concrete terms in the near future. Business park economic indicators, again, they're very good. You guys drive around, you hear about it, you read about it, you see about it at EDC. Our business parks are booming. Industrial in general in the Chicago area and really throughout the country is doing quite well. Of course, there's reasons for this. When Commissioner Gorski asked about, work from home numbers, well, this is due to everybody ordering logistics and delivery, the so-called last mile effect of industrial real estate. So there's still about 300 businesses, and really the business parks are economic drivers. Retail occupancy, we have positive news again. The vacancy rate is still quite low, even though I realized I wrote about all the previous ones but didn't mention this year's. It's in the report, but it's right about 6%. So it's right about where it was last year, a 5 point something. So the vacancy rate is very low when it comes to commercial. I want to mention too, people have asked this in past years with the commercial rate, is that it's based on square footage. So here's the new Culver's, the CoStar report that I ordered to look at this every year is a very detailed, not something you want to see in the packet. It's about a 70-page report, and it details every commercial zone property in the village, how much is occupied, how much it isn't, if there's an asking price, that kind of information. So I could tell you that the CoStar report shows that the vacancies in the village are basically scattered into strip centers throughout the village. There's some very chronically vacant buildings, as you know, that are really hard to fill. But for the most part, the vacancies have been like, say, 1 or 2 spaces in a strip center with 12 units. So retail occupancy, I just have a rendering of a new mobile station that would be coming to the corner of 59 and Stearns. The village approved 2 fuel stations last year, including the True North, which is the village's first truck stop that should be built at 25 and West Bartlett Road. This is the Buc-ee's. They'll be demolishing the Sonic, which is now closed. It won't be a vacant building for long because it's going to be removed in favor of Buc-ee's expansion. Also, I want to mention that a lot of the ways we promote our village for retail are through trade shows, and there were no live trade shows held in 2020, but we're still active. We're still members of ICSC and Access O'Hare West. We still communicate with them. We still communicate with members, so we still are trying to fill some of those spaces. Sales tax revenue increased to about $2.5 million. That's calendar year, indicating $253 million in taxable sales last year. If you recall, the village adopted a home rule sales tax in 2018, so that resulted in an additional 1.7 in sales tax collected over the same period of time. I'm going to tell you folks that this is the number I thought about and considered the most when putting together this report and for my report tonight, wondering why would sales tax be up during a pandemic year. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think the shopping local initiatives that were taken on by both the chamber and the village had a lot to do with it. In social media, I think a lot of people who didn't travel elsewhere for work or leisure ended up spending more of their dollars here in town rather than commuting to Chicago. We can tell you from the Metro numbers, the commuting from Bartlett to Chicago has almost gone really close to zero. So a lot of people who might spend money in Chicago during the day are in Bartlett now instead. So, or any other reason you can come up with. Home Depot in general through the whole chain had one of its best years ever. And our one large grocery store was busy every single day, from open to close almost. So the two largest sales tax generators were most likely the Jewel and the Home Depot. Industrial occupancy, last year it hit an all-time low of 3%. It ticked up to 9.7%. I say this every year too at this because we keep getting more and more and more industrial. Last year, if you recall, I was just telling you about the buildings that were about to be built. The two buildings at Stearns and Munger, they're each 207,000 square feet. They spent some time vacant, so there was 400,000 square feet of additional inventory on the books. I can tell you that the first building that Fastenal was the first tenant in one of the buildings, taking about a third. And during the pandemic, mostly remotely, I worked with a company called Optibelt that's also taking a large chunk of that building. And then the second building, the one that had been 100% vacant, we're working with a business called Platinum Converting. They've bought it. So it's going to be a single tenant building. In other words, 400,000 square feet of vacant space now occupied or soon to be occupied. You all may know there's a 436,000 square foot spec building getting built today. I talked about it a few months ago at an EDC meeting. We're working with potential tenants there. So my point is that you see the industrial occupancy rate fluctuate more because there's so much building going on. There's a new spec building, 400,000 square feet. The inventory shows 400,000 square feet vacant. Next year, I come here and tell you there's a new 400,000 square foot tenant. And we are working with some prospects for that speculative building as well. So industrial occupancy again. You see there's the picture. It doesn't even look like that anymore. Scott and I went to look at that building today. We call it the Connor Globe building, 436,000 square feet. That's a picture of it a month ago with a little snow on the ground when they were bringing in the walls. Today it's all walled off if you drive past there, and it looks like a building, that'll be ready hopefully sometime this year. And so anyway, that's also there's a building, I've talked about it now 4 years in a row. The building on Devon is very, very close to being finished. I drive past it to and from work every day, and I see, again, little bits of improvements here and there. That should be ready also this year. That's a 120,000 square foot building. That's the former Main Steel building. So again, I wrote industrial vacancy may temporarily increase again later this year into early next year. I didn't even really talk about the Blue Heron Business Park, but as Brewster Creek gets built out, Blue Heron has quite a few projects going there as well. It's not nearly as big as Brewster Creek. So it's not going to be another business park with 70 businesses and thousands of employees. The whole thing, I can't recall off the top of my head, but it's somewhere around 100 acres total, 115 maybe. But we do have quite a few businesses coming in there. A landscaping building is recently completed, a 35,000 square foot building. The one I told you about that was coming soon last year, Cathay Industries, they built a 100,000 square foot facility. That's their overhead picture of the Cathay building. Office occupancy, I don't talk about a lot. We don't have a lot of big office users. We have scattered office buildings throughout the village. The occupancy has never, or the vacancy rate, I should say, is only 8%. But ever since I've looked at this metric, it's always been, the occupancy rate has never really gone lower than 89% since I've seen it. It got up to about 98% at one point. So there's no single large user, which is good and bad. We don't have those huge offices, buildings with 5,000 people in them, but we're also not subject to some business like Sears or Motorola or somebody like that leaving the town. That's going to really put us in a bind. So summary, good. I'm at the summary. I was going to say there's no one metric. I hit probably just now on like a dozen or so, but there's somebody might call you. Funny story, Culver's wanted a map of where all the schools and churches were in the village. First time in economic development for 20 years I've ever been asked to map out churches. People ask, they like to look at what the income levels are, education, density, traffic counts, things like that you get asked all the time. But this is just kind of a broad overall perspective of it, and just wanted to let you know nobody that we meet with really wants to look at all these metrics, but they want specific ones and a general overview of it. Daytime population continues to be a challenge, but it's something that we're trending in the right direction on. Again, I expect, I was going to say I hope, but really expect to continue reporting improvements in that metric. It should keep going up as some of the new businesses that I talked about, like OptiBelt, like McKesson come in, like Platinum Converting, like these new businesses coming into Blue Heron Business Park come in. That should continue increasing our daytime population metrics. Also, the downtown TOD plan, take a look at this Midway Landing bowling alley. One of the things we say also frequently at Village Hall is that Manny Rafidia's redevelopment of Bartlett Plaza to Streets of Bartlett on its own has increased a lot of these numbers that you look at. When it comes to number of businesses, I probably named 5 in that shopping center. People are spending a lot of money there. At the new O'Hare's, at the new restaurants there, at the CBD store, people are going there every day, all day, spending money. When the bowling alley opens, you're going to see a ton of cars over there, and you're just going to see a continued increase in the activity over there. It was in my long report, but also the space where O'Hare's used to be. The minute they left on a Friday and Monday, Trackside Diner started working on their build out. So we backfilled. That wasn't a space that was going to sit vacant for 2 years trying to fill. They got somebody in there right away. So again, we hope that it keeps trending in the right direction. I know there's a lot of information in here. I just kind of glossed over some of it quickly. And if you have any questions about it, now's a good time to ask, and I'll do my best. After I have some water.
It looks like you put a great deal of time and effort into this.
You're welcome. It's a lot of reports. It's a lot of information. But like I said, when I introduce this every year, it's good information to know, and it's good to have at hand. Ironically, a lot of times I like it when people ask for stuff like this right when the information is fresh, but most of the time I'm sending it out later in the year. People tend to ask me for it all the time in November and December, and I'm sending them information from March, or this is a good time of year to do this because the sales tax figures for the state for the calendar year just came out this month. So I think I'm going to put an asterisk on April now instead of doing this report January through March. I like to look at the entire year of sales.
Tony, I was thinking about those business parks, and, as I was driving back that way, I'm like, well, what's missing? I guess at least with Brewster Creek, they're close enough to 59. I'm just thinking, okay, where are these people going to go out to lunch, right? Because you're always looking for some place to go out to lunch. So Brewster Creek might be close enough to 59 that you can get Wendy's, McDonald's, and KFC, whatever. How about Blue Heron? I mean, would it benefit the city to have a strip of fast food restaurants somewhere over that way so that there would be opportunities for people to go out to lunch?
Well, the answer is yes to that, but with a big asterisk, is that those areas don't meet the criteria that a lot of those are looking for.
Okay.
And I'm going to put one more word on it. They don't meet it yet.
Okay.
If there's more people and more traffic out there, it'll become more attractive to them. So in a word, yes, but I don't think you'll be seeing like a McDonald's, Taco Bell, Wendy's and stuff. I think maybe you'll see like a freestanding, type of standalone place maybe coming out there at some point. But I can honestly tell you from just years of experience doing this, the businesses don't yet see that area as viable for that type of business. But I do say that we did approve the village's first truck stop there.
Yeah.
And that's a big step in the right direction. It might not be, it's not where you want to go to lunch every day, but it's going to have a lot of the basic provisions for the residents out there who sometimes don't want to come into town, or if there's trains happens to be there, they want to get, if you want to get milk real quickly or beer or bread, that's going to be a place you can get it. But in terms of getting a chain restaurant there, that's quite a few years away at this point. Well, I won't say quite a few, but let's say a few years away.
All right.
Well, it sounds like the Crown Development project might further that along, correct? Since that's really, Old Blue Heron is out on the West Bartlett Road.
Yeah, it's pretty far out.
Toward 25, so.
Right.
But that obviously increases the population between 59 and 25.
It does. That would be a big site. I didn't bring the original marketing plan here, but part of the elements of it was plans for various areas, like Route 59 corridor was one, downtown was another, business parks were another, and we talked quite a bit about what could or may go to that corner of 59 and West Bartlett Road. We'd looked at it for commercial over the years, but without belaboring the point too much, like big box retail is not something that's expanding at all anywhere at this time. So, we've looked at it and met with Crown Group for many years, trying to get anything going there. And I can say it's generally a residential project in nature with some commercial right at the corner. So Scott and I and the rest of the staff are going to work together to attract a real good commercial to that site.
I was just going to ask, I haven't driven on that corridor between 59 and 25 in a while, but outside of the gas station and mini mart, just after the curve, or it's right there at the corner at 25 and West Bartlett. Is there anything else, like a convenience store?
Nothing, not a thing. And it goes in and out of the county, so there's a lot of unincorporated land. Scott and I were driving around there today. There's a truck parking land that's not in the village. There's a gigantic, I don't know how to even describe it, like a kind of a depressed area of land that I think was also gravel mining years ago that's not in the village, but some people looking at it from time to time. Siebert Landscaping is along there. There's a mobile home park. It's kind of an odd area, but we have a West Bartlett Road corridor plan that staff worked on with consultants for years, back when I started in 05 and 06. So we do have an overall plan for West Bartlett Road. It's just taking many years to come to fruition.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a way we can come up with maybe a temporary solution to service the workers that are in those industrial parks, like maybe doing food trucks or things of that nature that, we can also then collect sales tax? And during COVID, I know that there was a number of communities trying just to stay safe within their communities and trying to hire food trucks just to come to their communities so people didn't have to go out.
Yes, Commissioner Hughes, there actually are food trucks that go there. Interestingly enough, they go to the same businesses every day. Typically, they don't drive around too much. We like to encourage the employees there to frequent the businesses at 59 and Stearns. You'll always see people. If you go to Dogfather any day of the week, you're going to see a lot of people from the business park. But of course, they, for the most part, they don't have a lot of time to go to a sit-down restaurant, but you'll see them at the fast food restaurants at 59 and Stearns. Or I shouldn't just say fast food, but also quick casual. But also, the answer to your question is yes. It would be nice to have another, you know, kind of quick and convenient, low-price food option for them out that way. Ironically enough, Sonic was one of the businesses that I worked with to bring into town that I had recruited at those ICSC shows that I talk about. And one of the things that helped attract them to the town was telling them that they would have a lot of people from the business park coming to drive in there for a quick lunch. But here they are, about 12 years later, you know, leaving the town. But there are businesses of that nature are the ones that typically attract the business park employees. A lot of them don't have a lot of time for lunch. Most of them a half hour. And a lot of the buildings that I have visited there, most of them have lunchrooms also. So it's a limited amount of opportunity there, but it is an opportunity for sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If there's no more discussion on the economic indicator report, we can move on to the next agenda item, which would be dining guide update.
Yes, Joey has a nice rendering of that in front of you, as well as on the screen here. And not only has Joey put that up there, but he is our designer for this. This is something that originally came out of the EDC, I'm going to say at least 10 years ago, in the throes of the Great Recession, when we were looking at every which way and everything we could possibly do to boost businesses. We came out with our first dining guide, and we update it periodically. Interestingly enough, it's typically me who's waiting to update it, because I'm waiting for One Taco Dos Tequilas to open, and then once they open, I'm waiting for Trackside Diner to open. So whenever you do this, I should also want to say that we have an app online that Joey helps keep up to date with our GIS staff. So if something closes or something new opens between printings, we have it on there. And
It's really nice.
Commissioner Smedilla has it up there right now, and it's something we like to drive people to.
Great job.
But this is a nice, you know what, a lot of people aren't going around thinking, hey, I should go to the village website and look up where the restaurants are. So every year or so, we print up these dining guides, and we spread them around. I mean, you're going to see them. We're going to have them. I've got about 6 or 7 buildings. They know me. I walk in every year, and I say, can we put 100 or 200 dining guides? People take them. People take them at the Chamber of Commerce, at the library, at the Athletic Center, Home Depot and Jewel, the 2 big boxes usually let me put them there. I put them in the train station, various businesses throughout town, the banks, the friendly bankers like Commissioner Erickson will put a bunch in her bank, and we'll just generally get them out there. And, you know, we want to do whatever we can. I kind of glossed over the sales tax in general, but again, eating and drinking establishments is one of our biggest sales tax generators. We have also, I should mention, it's kind of backtracking. We generate 3 times the amount of sales tax in DuPage County than we do in Cook. So the DuPage County area is really where all the sales taxes are being generated, and a lot of them are from these places. Places like Bannerman's and McMay's and all the restaurants out there, as well as our downtown restaurants. So Joey did a beautiful job of updating this, making it very attractive. Once we make sure everything's 100% accurate and no typos, we'll send it to the printer, And by the time the EDC meets next month, you'll see these all over the place. So, I want to thank you to Joey, and it's interesting. I will say that it is interesting to look at the dining guides from 5 years ago, from 6 years ago, from 7 years ago, from 10 years ago. They do change, but, he had to tweak it a little bit to make room for all the new restaurants. We used to have all the websites in it, and there's not enough space in it now. So we have the name, address, phone number. You should be able to figure out by the names what most of these places are. And if you can't, just Google it or call them. So it's nice that we've got some bakeries on here.
Can I just make
I know at the EDC even, we've talked about wanting bakeries for quite a few years. So we have 2 of them on here now.
Can I just make a quick suggestion for it? Because I just scanned the QR and I think it's fantastic. It's really, really nice. And as I'm looking at like the different restaurants and things, like I've never been in the Bartlett Oriental Mart. I would have never have thought of going there because I didn't know what was in it. And looking at the inside picture, I'm like, oh, well, look, you can get like carryout stuff there. I really kind of thought like it was more like a grocery store. But then when I think of like other places like, if you're not in town, like Bellows, I wouldn't necessarily be able to picture that, but with the picture, I'm like, oh, I know what that building is. Is there any way that we could have an indoor and an outdoor picture of it? Because I love the outdoor because it clues me in as to where it is, but I loved the indoor too because when I looked at that Bow's, the Bartlett Oriental Mart, I would have never gone there until I saw the inside, and I'm like, oh, I get that. Yeah. So I think that would be super cool.
Yeah, I can talk to our GIS staff and see if we can get some more pictures, especially for some of those lesser-known places, and get those inside shots.
Because I'm directionally challenged, so when I see a picture of the outside, I'm like, oh, I picture that plaza, I can see where that is. But I love the inside because now I know where I'm going to go get something to eat because I would have never, ever.
There's quite a few places like that where they might be in an older-looking center that's not quite as attractive as some of the newer ones, but you go in there and they are very attractive. Bellows is a good example of that.
We have a margarita there, bring it DD. They're cold.
That's it. We're gonna print those out soon, and keep pushing our local dining options.
Did you ever think about maybe working with some of the restaurants and asking if they want to provide a quick thing? Because you can kind of tell what food they are, but did we ever want to open it up to the restaurants and say, can you give us, 3 sentences to explain what your restaurant's like? Well, I see you've got it here on Ambrosia, sorry.
I think we've mostly taken no, go ahead, Joey.
And we do have our email list set up for individualized sectors, so we could easily email out to them, and we can see who does respond and get that over to our GIS staff to add that on there.
Yeah, give them a limit of a couple of sentences, and I wonder if they even know that this is there.
Some of them do. Usually they do. They know that it's there. They contact me if any information is wrong. This is backtracking to about a year ago, but during the height of the pandemic, when there were a lot of closures, we were communicating with them frequently, weekly really, and we were making changes to how do you pick up from them, what are their hours. People were changing their hours. It was very hectic. I know I just painted a pretty good picture of the economy, but it was the most stressful year in terms of working with existing businesses that I've ever experienced. And I know when we were doing a lot of those remote meetings, most of our reports to you were about all the things we were doing for supporting local businesses. I didn't even mention that we rolled out the EDC, reviewed in one meeting a new small business grant program, and then Joey had to turn around the minutes in about one day, and it went to the village board the next Tuesday. And we approved it and made about 25 small grants. We did, I feel like we did everything we possibly could to support existing businesses last year. It doesn't mean every single business got a grant or a PPP or an EIDL loan. There were quite a few that didn't. But we definitely kept them apprised of every option that was out there.
There's actually, it's funny, Tony mentions the communications with the businesses during the pandemic. We have somebody in Bartlett who is a franchisee of 6 locations, and not to pat ourselves in the back or pat Tony and Joy in the back, but he did say to us, out of his 6 locations in 6 different towns, that the communication Bartlett had with him far exceeded any other town. He said he saw correspondence from us about a dozen times, and he said some of the other towns that he does business in didn't hear anything. So we're very proud of that communication.
Olivia's is actually, that's the one on Lake Street. That's gonna reopen with a new, the village board approved a new liquor license for an operator there, I think at its last meeting, or not, 2 meetings ago. Yeah. I don't know if they're gonna change their name.
Is it a new owner then?
It's a new owner, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll have to make sure we have the latest on them.
Are there any indicators that show people are going to be returning to work downtown and utilizing the municipal parking lot in the near future?
It's not a formal thing. Well, I shouldn't say that, because the village owns and operates the parking for Metra and collects a fee. So it's not, the metric is how many people are riding the Metra. We're assuming the people who take it daily are for work purposes. And I think Scott might have a better grasp on the numbers, but it's very, very low compared to where it was pre-pandemic.
We met with Metra last week to talk about a number of things in the downtown. And they actually said to us that they believe their ridership will be at 70% of what it was by the end of the year. So that's pretty good. I was kind of floored when I heard that. But they know their commuters better than I do, so I don't have any reason not to believe them. But if they can get to 70, 80% by the end of the year, I think that would be great, because we're eager to have some cars back in those parking lots. So we'll continue to monitor that.
That should skew some of the data we just reviewed then back to more people leaving town during the daytime to go to work than...
It definitely will.
They said they think that some people, while you might not have as many regular 9-to-5s, those individuals are being replaced by multiple individuals that may go in 2 days a week or 1 or 2 days a week. So while you're losing your regular 9-to-5 commuter, you're gaining some folks that are now willing to work in the city, because where before they might not have gone to Chicago 5 days a week because of work-life balance, they're able to get a job in the city where maybe they only go in 1 or 2 days a week. So they believe they're going to see a lot of those types of commuters as well.
As someone who commuted to the city for the most part 5 days a week, I can tell you that my employer hasn't even started to discuss when we're returning back to work. And even so, they've been putting out surveys and such asking us when we're ready to come back, do we want to come back 3 days a week, 4 days a week, or 5 days a week? So they're almost even providing us options as to what that looks like.
We're hearing that from a number of people. That's fairly typical for throughout the suburban area as well.
Yeah, I think I take the train. I started a couple weeks ago again. 70% is not happening.
I don't think so either.
It's 5 to 10% right now, and I'm probably a unique case that goes in. It's just.
They did.
I wouldn't count on that if I were them.
They did tell us they were at 15% currently.
How much?
They said 15%.
Okay.
They weren't specifically talking about Bartlett. I think they were talking about the whole Metro system.
All the lines, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think as things open up again, people are going back to, venues are starting to open, sports, even though it's limited, people are going out to some of those things. So I think that's some of the additional people that you're going to see picking up away from just the regular commuters, is that, I haven't been on a train all year, but I guarantee if we go to the city to go to a museum or something, it's gonna be on the train. So I think you'll start to see that uptick a little bit more in that casual ridership.
And I think it depends on proximity to the city too, because I mean, just as I said, as a commuter, you know, someone who lives, you know, 2 or 3, 4 or 5 stops in might be taking the train more than somebody like me who does not look forward to an hour train ride with a bunch of people.
Right.
So, you know, I think that it's going to vary depending on how far out you are from the city as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right, it'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on, for sure.
Yeah. I already told them I'm not coming back if I can help it. I'll keep my sales dollars in Bartlett, thank you.
Good, yeah, we like to hear that. You contributed to those numbers.
Most of it has gone to Jewel, yes.
It doesn't appear we have any further comment on the dining guide. New business would be next on the agenda.
Well, take it away.
While this isn't exactly economic development related, we just want to inform you that tomorrow at the community center, there's going to be a vaccination clinic of 3,600 shots. Most towns have done 12 or 2,400. We went big and we're doing 3,600, and we've got 70 volunteers and the Park District and Jewel and Jane Society, and it's quite the big operation. So just a little community news to share with you all. Oh, yes. There's some, I mean, people, you know, we did a rollout of the link where we kept the link private for some time so we could target some of our seniors on lists that we got from the township and the county, and then we went into some of our frontline workers to make sure they got it first, and then we finally went public with the link. So there'll be a number of people who by the time they registered a week ago may have already gotten a dose somewhere else. So there might be a few extra spots, but we'll start putting together a waiting list. But I would imagine that we'll have a good turnout, and yeah, there's no slots available at this time.
You know what shot is it?
It's Pfizer.
There was a Park District put out a email today asking people not to show up if they don't have appointments. So if people don't show up because they previously got a shot somewhere else, there's probably going to be some extra shots left over.
It's good that they sent that out. I don't know everybody who got it, but I was asked twice today when people just heard that they were doing a clinic, people said they were thinking of just showing up, and I said, well, you have to have an appointment. And you can't honestly just show up to it, so. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right.
You go, the local place, the Bartlett Pharmacy down here, they couldn't get rid of their shots one day. They were like, I had a friend come in, and he was texting us. He's like, they got to get rid of 10 of these today, and nobody's there.
Wow.
Because of that problem of people getting it done, double booking or whatever it is. So, I don't know.
So there's
I'd show up if I...
similar incident at Meyer where they actually had a pharmacist walking through the store.
Yeah.
Because they,
Really?
again, somewhere between 30 and 50 shots because people didn't show up for their appointment.
Yeah.
And they spoil, you know.
If you're looking, it's worth a shot going, I think. But just my opinion.
It's all a new business.
Okay, if there is no further discussion on new business, we can consider adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Meeting
Thank you.
is adjourned.
Thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks, Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hope we have another live meeting next week and we don't regress.